Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the ridiculous lengths that Jacob Rees-Mogg has gone to, potentially illegally, in preventing MPs from voting in Parliament. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, up until now, in order to work around the coronavirus pandemic, MPs have been largely working from home remotely. They've been watching proceedings in Parliament remotely, with no more than 50 MPs physically allowed into the Commons debating chamber, and they've also been voting remotely as well. And as someone pointed out this week, Boris Johnson keeps talking about developing world-beating systems to fight the coronavirus as he looks to distract attention from the fact that we don't have any systems at all for most of the things for which we should have systems. But here we had something that was genuinely innovative. It might not have sounded that impressive, but we had a system of allowing parliamentarians to work and vote and debate remotely. And it worked. A remote parliament. It could be a blueprint for the future. So the one genuinely impressive system that was set up has now been disabled by government. In its place, the government want MPs to physically return in order to vote, and in fact this is what was happening yesterday. Naturally, this means that some MPs are not able to attend. They may have disabilities, they may be shielded for some other reason, some vulnerability that means that they can't go. And what it means is that if you are living in a constituency where your MP is in this category, in other words, if your MP was not able yesterday to go and vote, what the government have basically said is that you aren't allowed in any part of our democracy. You don't count, you don't get a say. And you don't get a say because your MP can't have a say. They cannot vote at this time. They've basically disenfranchised MPs, and by extension all of the constituents of that MP. Whether they voted for that MP or not, they're your MP. And that's it. Your MP is not allowed to vote, and therefore your say is non-existent. And there is legal action underway on this. I don't know how seriously. I can't imagine it is legal, and it certainly has to be unconstitutional to put in place a system that basically says to various MPs, because these MPs that are shielding aren't just choosing not to go to Parliament, they're not allowed there. But just as Johnson's prorogation of Parliament was declared unlawful last year, much of the damage will have been done before any action can be taken. But it wasn't just the unconstitutional nature of the scrapping of the COVID measures for voting that's of note. The replacement system was a very expected complete farce. So the normal procedure for MPs to vote is that they go into what's called the division lobby, and there's two doors, and you go into one. If you're in favour of the motion, you go through one door, and if you're opposed to the motion, you go through the other door. So you vote by going through a door. And I know, cutting edge, cutting edge. And this couldn't possibly be done with social distancing in mind. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, who himself is absolutely got one foot in the 19th century. He'd dearly love to live in the 19th century. Had the mother of all brain farts, and came up with a queuing system. So that in itself would make the system impossible, because having over 600, if you could actually get all the MPs there, having over 600 MPs queue up 2 metres apart to vote, imagine just the length required to do that. It's over a kilometre straight away just to be able to do that. So a vote that takes seconds to do remotely, up until this week, would take, if you assume each MP could go through at the rate of 1 every 6 seconds, it'd be ridiculous. I'm not even going to think about it. Not even going to think about it. That'd be an hour. And there's a bit of a video that someone was posted, because the media weren't allowed to film this farce, at least inside the buildings. But it didn't stop actual MPs doing it on their phones, recording it on their phones and saying how ridiculous it was. And I have to say, when you looked in the queue, they were not moving along at any rate. I don't even know how long it took to do a single vote. It was ridiculous. The queue was not moving very quickly at all. But in theory, you could have a queuing system with social distancing in mind. It would mean that your MP could have no time for anything else that day. I mean, MPs have other parliamentary business. They have meetings, committees, things like that to be done. They've got a job as an MP to be able to respond to constituents. No time for that either. But in theory, it could be done. If you accept the fact that they're not going to get any actual work done, you could do this. Only even that wasn't happening. It didn't even get that happening because MPs, they were sort of distancing and then were sort of not distancing. I mean, apart from the fact there was a log jam at Portcullis House while they were just trying to get into the queue. I mean, look at this. It's a whole gaggle of them. But MPs in the queue themselves were only distanced from other MPs in front and behind them. And I have to say, it didn't really look like 2 metres to me either. But maybe. I wasn't there with a tape measure. But the thing is that once they'd voted, they didn't exit somewhere else. They came back the same way through the corridor, passing within centimetres of all the other MPs behind them in the queue. So there was 2 metres maybe, I don't think it was 2 metres, but there was a distance in front and behind, but none at all at the side. And I couldn't believe it until I saw it. I actually couldn't believe it until I saw it. No wonder they banned journalists from recording this spectacle. But of course, like I say, that didn't stop MPs recording it. And as someone astutely pointed out, if a single one of those MPs comes down with symptoms, just one MP, all of them will have to isolate because they've all been in contact with each other. And there's no point in trying to work out who went past whom or anything like that. They'll all have to isolate. I mean, I know this idea of Jacob Rees-Mogg was born out of malice, but did it really have to be this incompetent? Did it have to be this thick? I mean, on one level, you look at it and it's quite funny. You look at it, God, it's like a circus. It's a bit clownish. And it's the sort of thing that a political comedy scriptwriter would absolutely come up with. You could well imagine this in something like The Thick of It or, Yes, Prime Minister or something like that. You could. But once you've had a chuckle and rolled your eyes, you inevitably have to wonder what this looks like overseas. It's bloody embarrassing. And we've got over 4 more years, at least, of this government. And don't imagine just because they will get rid of Boris Johnson before the end of it, but they won't replace him with anyone that's also not a clown. Maybe they'll replace him with someone less oafish, but they will still be a clown because they haven't really got much choice. I mean, I'll tell you what being British is like at the moment. It's basically like being out and about, walking around with your embarrassing Uncle Charlie who tells bad jokes to passers-by. And you just want the earth to open up and swallow you whole. And we still have to come back to the why. Why are they doing this? We had a system that worked perfectly well. Jacob Rees-Mogg wants all MPs to return so that in Prime Minister's questions they can be stood behind Boris Johnson all cheering and shouting to make him look a little bit less impotent. But this doesn't do that because they're still not allowed inside the debating chamber. The government can't impose that, as far as I know anyway. And this does nothing to help Boris Johnson or the government, not a thing. And also, what happens if an MP does contract the virus, like in all seriousness, and they become seriously ill? What would happen if a government minister became ill as Boris Johnson did? What if it affected Jacob Rees-Mogg himself? I mean, there's looking like a tit, and then there's looking like a dangerous tit, isn't there? And just as a final point, when I thought I couldn't be any more incredulous, it was perfectly understandable to see opposition MPs on social media complaining about this ridiculous, undemocratic and frankly dangerous farce. They were voting against it after all because it's ridiculous, undemocratic and dangerous. What took me, and I mean very genuinely by surprise, really honestly by surprise, as someone who observes British politics every day, was when I saw Conservative MPs saying how ridiculous this system was. Now at first, nothing wrong with that. I thought, oh good, at least they're going to vote against it. They'll be rebelling. Even though Boris Johnson had put the word on, if anyone votes against this measure, you're voting against Brexit. Like, what? How? Exactly. But anyway, there it is. But the problem is that these Conservative MPs that were tweeting how ridiculous it was, I'm not saying exclusively, there may have been the odd one that did that and did vote against it, but certainly some of the Tory MPs that were saying how ridiculous this system was voted in favour of it. I mean to say, if you're going to vote for something, don't say how stupid it is whilst you're actually voting for it, at the same time as you're voting for it. How much credibility do you expect to have as an MP if you say how stupid something is at the same time as voting for it? In all honesty. But there it is. You know, if we thought we couldn't look any more ridiculous in the eyes of the world, Boris Johnson can always scrape another little layer off the bottom of that barrel there. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.